Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Binge Battle. If you're watching us on any of our many streaming platforms, thank you. You're returning champions. And we are now a podcast. You can listen to us just in audio form and really just in the nick of time for this episode because, handsome though I may be, I can't compete with the looks of our very two incredible panelists today who are going to be talking about the hit MCU show Moon Knight. They just keep making these MCU shows as we're now watching Miss Marvel along with the rest of the world. It dropped not too long ago, but Moon Knight is the subject today, and it's a very different turn for the MCU, particularly when it comes to the world of streaming, because Moon Knight was an established character in the comics, but really didn't get a movie treatment to set us up for wanting to watch the streaming show. We just are exploring this character of Steven/Mark, played by Oscar Isaac, both of them, at the same time that Steven is discovering who exactly this Mark person is and unraveling the mysteries that are involved in Moon Knight. The 6-episode series will be spoiled here today. We're going to get deep into some lore, some mythology, and the happenings and goings on. So this is your spoiler alert warning. If you've not yet seen the show and you want to check it out, maybe hit pause on this, go check out some Moon Knight, and come on back for a spirited debate between two of the all-time greats. They love their MCU, they love their comic book films, they love their trivia, and now they have some thoughts on Moon Knight when it comes to the best episode, your favorite character, your surprises, and what you are most looking forward to in the future of Moon Knight. So let's bring on, I like to call this guy the future because, you know, I met him a long time ago. He was just a young pup, and look at him now. He hosted some killer panels at Star Wars Celebration back in May. You can subscribe to his YouTube channel, The First Cut, where you can find hit shows like The Meaning of. He is the one, the only, Andres Cabrera. Welcome in, Ace. You first discovered Moon Knight as a character, I assume, at some point in your matriculation through fandom. What about Moon Knight made you excited to see the show?
I feel like a lot of it had to do, I know a lot of people have said this before, pre-show, but going into a little bit of a darker side of Marvel and trying to see how they can adapt that into an MCU TV show. We've known that Marvel has done darker stuff in the past when it comes to the Netflix series, but we haven't really seen a TV show dabble into some really dark territory. So that was an interesting aspect for sure. The Egyptian culture aspect is something that I've always been fascinated with since I was a kid. A lot of that has to do with the fact that The Mummy came out in 1999, and I was the target audience. I was the perfect age. So a lot of that has to do with a little bit of my knowledge of that as well. But overall, it was I wasn't too familiar with the comic series, but enough to definitely get me excited with the cast as well. I mean, Oscar Isaac is incredible. So that's what really got me hyped for this show.
Well, everyone watched the show in season 1, so maybe if we get a season 2, we'll have Brendan Fraser pop in and maybe please your inner child of hearts. Your competitor today is a guy that you're a little familiar with, Andres, because I think I've seen you both compete in Binge Battle before. He is, like Andres, a wonderful movie trivia Schmodown player, and he also wrote the book on James Bond. Literally, it's called Bond, James Bond. He is an equal fan of DC and Marvel, I'd say, because he owns both Batman and Captain America costumes. Mike Kalinowski is back, and the killer. It is so nice to see you. And you were a big fan of Moon Knight before the show, or was this one of those characters where you're like, really, we're giving that one a series?
No. I was in the, it's the former, right? Yeah, former and latter. I was the former. I've been a Moon Knight fan, like, if you had to pick my top 3 Marvel characters, it was Daredevil, Mr. Fantastic, and Moon Knight. So I've been waiting for this. I wanted a movie years and years ago before the MCU was a thing. And then it seemed like then the Netflix, when that stuff started happening, is like, oh, maybe now's the chance we're going to get a Moon Knight, because it would have been a perfect fit for that. No go on that. And then we're starting to get down to like Squirrel Girl and stuff like that are getting their own shows. I'm like, come on, when's he getting his show here? And then they finally announced that. I think it was about 2 years ago when they first kind of just put up the graphic that we're getting it. So yeah, I've been waiting for this for a very long time.
Yeah, and I believe that was at the D23 Disney Expo. And so knowing that Moon Knight's coming out and then hearing that Oscar Isaac is going to be playing the title character, I think that pleased my Star Wars loving heart. And so to see it all play out was so exciting and intriguing, and just it was storytelling that we're not necessarily used to in the MCU. And so this is going to be a fun episode with knowing these two fellows, some raging debates going on. So let's kick it off in style right after I give you all the rules of engagement. Each competitor is going to have have up to 1 minute to give their opening argument about a particular topic. And then they'll have a 30-second rebuttal round, and then they get to drop the mic with a closing statement. And then it is up to me, your humble host, Mark Ellis, to make a judgment as to who won the point in said round. We are prepared for 4 rounds of verbal combat here today, with possibly a tiebreaker 5th round should it necessitate that. I know Mike and Andres pretty well. It just might. So let's get into round number 1. Here we go with our topic. It's simple: the best episode of Moon Knight. Mike, you had episodes 1 through 6 to pluck from. Which one did you take and why?
I picked episode 5, Asylum. My thought with this was, going up to this episode, I was a little off the fence on it. I was like, wasn't really loving it. First one was second was 2 and 3 and 4, 5 hits, boom, I'm in. And I see this and I say this is the best episode because this, I feel, is the episode that the showrunners pitched. I think they went into Marvel like, this is the show, and then they built out from that. Like, that was the crux. I mean, you got to see a tour de force performance by Oscar Isaac in this role. This is where everything kind of turned on its head. We got the battling back and forth. We got going to the land of the dead. We got, is Harrow the good guy? Is this all in his head? It left with more questions than answers, but that's exactly what it needed to do, because that should have been the crux. Like, this starts it, and then we go on the journey, and it unfolds from there. So we're kind of, in my opinion, given 4 lackluster episodes building up to this, and then it just blew out the doors on that, setting up the season finale, which then wrapped up in little time. They had 45 minutes to wrap it up, but they actually were able to wrap up those threads that they were established just 1 episode prior to that. So this one kicked off. I didn't need the 4 episodes that came before it to make this series work for me.
It's interesting to think about in context of what Mike just said, Andres, because it's like Mike is sitting on the edge of his seat with his many dogs at his household, getting ready for episode 5. What was the episode for you, Mr. Cabrera, that really paid off the most?
Well, I take umbrage with the fact that we didn't need the 4 before, because I chose episode number 4, The Tomb, which I feel is the best directed, the best well-rounded episode that the show had to offer, based on the complexities that we see in genre bending, whether it comes to adventure, mystery, horror, all kind of meshed into one. We get the scene when Layla and Steven basically tomb dive inside that tomb and try to discover Alexander the Great's coffin, which is what is keeping Amet's statue or totem inside its mouth. And we see all that comes before it with the Heka priest attacking Layla and Steven. Throughout those scenes, we get a little bit more backstory inside Layla's character when that's being explained to us as well. So we get more investment in her character. We get all these layers and layers. And finally, the episode ends with Steven getting killed or Mark getting killed, and then coming back to life into that asylum. And we start to reveal ourselves as questioning what is going on. So I feel like all those layers coming into one is what made episode 4 the best in the entire show.
Mike, back to you. It was a pretty hot take you had coming out of the gate there, where the first 4 episodes were just meh before episode 5 really paid off. So let's hear a little bit more about why 5 was that one that you were waiting for.
It was, everything was coming together finally. It was the characters about that way, and we were introduced to Taweret, which was a great addition to this. And you're like, what are we doing? You got a talking hippo. We're talking about the sands and balancing the scales. And then they went into that one room, this sarcophagus. We're like, because they were teasing Jake Lockley, which a lot of people didn't know, but up until this point, that's when the tease happened. And again, I'm looking at this as from a fan that wanted these things. And this is what, people are kind of on the fence about the show, but I think overall you can't deny that people are saying that 5 was the one that's like, oh, this is what I understand. This is where the show kicks into high gear for me. And I think if you would have started with this out of the gate, you would have had a lot more people along for the ride for the entire thing.
Yeah, it was interesting to follow along with Moon Knight on social media, Andres, because it was like up and down, and fans were just like, it's so divergent in their takes and their feelings episode by episode. So season 1, episode 4 is what really spoke to you.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like episode 5 definitely had the emotional weight and the emotional complexity that we were kind of waiting for throughout the entire season. But I feel like that's more of like one singular episode that gave us that heart and that exposition that we needed. But as far as an episode that showed us the entire genre of what Moon Knight can bring, or the entire show of what it encapsulates. I think episode 4 tackles all of that inside one. We get that emotional complexity, maybe not with Mark in episode 4, but with Layla. We get that really intimate scene with her where she's literally breaking down in tears, just as well as Oscar Isaac was in episode 5. So I feel like that emotional complexity is inside episode 4 as well, maybe with a different character. And obviously the ending is such a shocking ending that it shows us that little bit of a mystery, or that little bit of a, throwing us off balance as far as what exactly we're watching, and if we're trying to believe what Mark is trying to tell us as a POV character. So I feel like 4 does a little bit more than 5 does as far as showing us the entire complexity of what Moon Knight brings.
Great arguments thus far. So let's wrap it up here in round number 1 with your closing take. Mike, you're up first.
I did like episode 4. I liked it better when I saw it, when it was Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, The Mummy. People talk about, tomb raiding films and Moon Knight was such a great, and it's like, no, we've seen it done before thousands of times. How many times are we going to see, Layla run around a truck as the bad guys just circle around her? They could have just looked in the truck and she was in the back seat. And then they're in the tomb and she's crossing the ravine, but the hands are coming out and grabbing her. But I'm like, what's going on here? I don't know geographically what's going on. I was lost. It was like they had a little bit of a set with some dark shadows, and I was like, oh, that's a tomb, and they're going to try and make us believe this is scary. I will say that bad guy, the priest guy, that was terrifying, but that was like one little highlight of that episode for me. I didn't need this show to be a horror show that people wanted it to be. I needed it to be a complex character study set in the superhero world, something we hadn't seen before. We've seen horror in superheroes before, but this inner demon between this man battling these things, and you see the two forces, the two different characters finally coming together, working together, realizing what they need to do, and with Mark sacrificing himself at the end, that to me was one of the best parts of the episode as well. Mark sacrificing himself into the sands to die when Steven's got to go on. And I thought, summed up perfectly, wanting us to get to that finale.
I mean, look, as a kid that went to Catholic school for a period of time, priests and or nuns are always horrifying to me anyway, when they're portrayed like that. Andres, let's go to you. You have the final take here in round 1.
Yeah, I feel like episode 4 does a lot to show off what Moon Knight really is about. Another thing that we didn't really touch on throughout this entire argument or conversation is the relationship between Layla and Mark/Steven, and how episode 4 perfectly creates this barrier and this rift between them that we're so excited when they're finally connecting and coming together. But episode 4 tells us basically that Mark had some sort of involvement with the death of her father, which again shows a little bit more of that complexity in that relationship. And Mark, if you followed anything on Twitter and anything on social media, we're invested in that relationship. We really like Layla and Mark, or Layla and Steven. So I feel like episode 4 also does a really good job of showing off that MCU romance that really hasn't always worked in the past, but works really well in this show. So it isn't just the horror and the adventure and the tomb raiding, which is also something that we want to see in an Egyptian-centered show, in my opinion. But it also shows us the relationship dynamics and the emotional dynamics of Layla and Mark.
First of all, I'm surprised neither one of y'all complimented. I mean, we heard compliments of episode 6, but I love the way that we have all these loose ends, that we tied up most of them, and I thought very well done in episode 6. But leading up to that, Andres makes a great point about the emotional core that we get to in episode 4. However, I feel like Mike hit the nail on the head when you talk about episode 5 and everything that was set up to pay off in episode 5, and then we get new questions to be answered in 6 and beyond. And so I really do feel like that was the episode where, when you're talking about making a show like this, that's where we need to get to have fans who are interested now be invested. And so by the slimmest of margins, I do have to go with episode 5 over episode 4. But Andres, I see why you love The Mummy, and I see why you love The Tomb, and I understand all of it. So well fought arguments both. Mike Kalinowski goes up 1-0 here in Binge Battle, which means we move on to round number 2, and our topic is the best character. Who is the best character in all of Moon Knight? And this could be a tricky answer because you may have to pick one version of some of the characters here. So we're going to start off with my favorite version of Andres Cabrera. Ace, kick us off.
Well, now I get to use Mike's argument against him because episode 5 showed us the incredible complexity and layers that Oscar Isaac brings to Mark Spector. I feel like Mark Spector showed us a character that had a tragic backstory that we haven't seen before. It wasn't the death of a family member. It wasn't some sort of tragic accident that gave him superpowers. It was simply an abusive family environment where he blamed himself for his brother's death, so much so that when his mother started to blame him as well, it created layers on top of layers of abuse inside his own brain, that he created Stephen Grant in order to give himself that axis of escape and that levity inside his heart because of how much abuse he had taken throughout his entire life. Episode 5 shows us the inception of Stephen Grant and how Mark basically came up through this environment of abuse in order to live out his life as a mercenary and to live out his life in some sort of gray aspect where he doesn't necessarily always do the right thing because of what he's faced. And Stephen Grant offers him that escape. So I feel like Mark, in just 5 episodes, is one of the most layered Marvel characters that we've ever seen before. So that's why I think Mark is the best character in this entire show.
Do we have a Mark versus Steven fight on our hands here? Mike Kalinowski, who's your favorite character from Moon Knight?
Well, that's the thing. Good thing he does have multiple personalities, but I'm sorry, and I'm going to go into my own argument in my last round, because I'm going to say it is the character of Layla. This character owned the show. This character should have been what the show is about. I say this as a Moon Knight fan. Every scene she took over, she kicked butt. I mean, we talk about, she put Laura Croft to shame if we're talking tomb raiding. That's what I wanted to see the character. Again, every time she was on screen, she was charming. She was magnetic. There was no damsel in distress. And coming from someone that loves the comics, the character was kind of taken over of a character named Marlena. They kind of reworked it and used Layla. So at first I'm kind of like, they're messing with the origin. And how dare they do this? And I want my character the way it's supposed to be. I fell in love with this character. 2-3 episodes in, I'm like, this is the show I wanted to be about. I didn't care when Mark was on screen. I wanted to see more of her. And when she wasn't on screen, I'm like, where is she? What's she doing? And then we get towards the end, the reveal of the Scarlet Scarab, taking over with Tauret's, being her avatar, and then the conversation and watching her, the transition between the Layla character and the Scarlet Scarab character, watching her go back and forth was just as compelling as when Oscar Isaac was doing it. And she was doing it with less material, less flashy material.
Yeah, it really is a credit to the role that even though we watched Mark and Steven kind of wrestle with their multiple personality issue, we still weren't prepared for sort of that shocking Scarlet Scarab reveal that we got later on in the program. So let's go back to you, Andres, stumping for a name that I like, Mark.
The thing with Mark is that it's always a counterbalance of more. The idea is at the end of the day, Mark had more material. Oscar Isaac had more to do. There was simply more complexity, more well-written character, more well-roundedness when it comes to Mark Spector's character. We see the backstory. We see his parents. There's something about telling and seeing when it comes to shows. And when we see young Mark, it really does hit us in an emotional core, even much more than Layla's emotional backstory as well, because seeing a little Mark create that Steven, it created a moment in us where we do feel so much for him as an older man when we see the Oscar Isaac version of him. So I feel like there's just simply more there when it comes to Mark Spector that we get created throughout the entire 6 episodes versus a Layla. Even though Layla is amazing, I can't, counterbalance that, but I do say that Mark simply had more there, and we do see a lot more throughout his entire journey.
Yeah, so we go back to Mike Kalinowski. It's almost like Andres is talking about the many characters that Oscar Isaac can pull off. Mike, you're going with May, who plays the role of Layla.
She had less to do. She had less to work with, but it just shows the power of the character. She did more with less. Can you imagine if we got 6 episodes that focused on her? It's phenomenal. There's talk of a spinoff show about her already. I think the fans, you can tell that's a character they resonated with, that just took off because of it, with Mark. And again, I came in with a lot of preconceived notions of what I wanted Mark Spector to be. Oscar Isaac would not be the actor I would have chosen to be cast in the role. And I'd said many times on different review shows, I think he was miscast in the role. I think he did a great job with what he was given. He's a phenomenal actor. I'm not taking that away from him. A lot of it, the beginning, the thought to go with Steven, I felt like I was watching a Family Guy, making fun of Hugh Grant, befuddled. Like, well, I'm terribly befuddled. I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, that didn't work for me. Then we didn't get enough of Mark, of the mercenary killer. I really wanted to see Jake show up, and he didn't show up to the very end there. So there's a lot that I didn't like with this way they're portraying the character. I thought the acting was great, and there's not a dig at his acting. He's phenomenal in the role. just as a fan of the character, it just wasn't hitting any of the buttons that I was hoping to get. And again, they had to make this for general audiences, not just the small group of comic fans that know Moon Knight, who hasn't really had a definitive history in 40 years of comics. I get that and I respect that, and they do a great job with it. But for me, when your show's called Moon Knight, and again, Moon Knight didn't even show up in Moon Knight. I think the character Moon Knight was in it for like 3 minutes out of 600 minutes or 300 minutes of show, you know? So this character, you know, Layla came in, Layla, Scarlet Scarab, knocked us out of the park, and the little screen time she had, that's a chef's kiss for me, buddy.
All right. Well, now we go to the closing arguments here, Andres. It's pretty strong words about Oscar Isaac playing either one of these roles.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like starting the show with Steven was such a bold move because there was kind of a question mark kind of moment with the audience where we did feel kind of like, who is this guy? Why is he so aloof? And why does he seem so off and not connected to the story? And it felt kind of like we were a little bit confused watching it. So seeing that growth and that, you know, journey throughout his character, seeing Mark come up at the end of episode 1 and then seeing Mark come up more and more until we get to see an entire story of Mark by episode 5, and we see what Steven actually is and what he means to Mark. It created this kind of retrospective view that to the audience were making us feel like, wait, all this time we've had these notions of how Steven is so aloof and dumb and annoying, and now we get to see that, all this time Steven was created from a center of abuse or of a point of just complete humiliation with his family. So it feels like a complete layered, complex story and a complete layered, complex journey created throughout the entire story of Moon Knight that was created so well by the creators of the show because it started with Steven. And it really made us feel like, man, all this time I felt like Steven was just this dumb guy, but it's actually this emotional, complex, you know, layered human brain that has gone through so much that created Steven. And I feel like that is a character that we've really never seen before, at least not in the MCU when it comes to that type of layer of complexity. So to me, I think Steven was great. I think Mark just embodied what Steven was. And I think Oscar Isaac delivered that on an emotional level by creating this amazing performance throughout all 6 episodes, but especially episode 5, when he showed us just how emotionally baggaged he was. So to me, I think Mark is just an incredible character.
It's the most fun part of Binge Battle for me is when like the two competitors will use like a previous argument the other one had against them, and later round. These are two experts we're dealing with today, kids. Mike Kalinowski, you get the mic drop moment here in round 2.
It just goes to show you when every week after week, I want to see more of Layla. The character of Oscar Isaac eventually got there towards the end and his thread was wrapped up, but then we threw another layer on top of that. Being a comic book fan, being in the lore of these characters and living these characters and wanting to see them come to life on screen. And when they create a character with the combination of a great character with a great actress and they knock that out of the park together, and it gives you something more. And there can't be anything like when you want to go back, you get a great meal at a restaurant and you want to go back for that meal again, don't you? That says something about, that's the best thing about the place, about the restaurant. So with this show, best thing about Moon Knight was Layla, because we want to see more of her. Everyone's talking about the Scarlet Scarab. You know, you can usually judge the internet the day after a show drops and how they are, either like, you know, 1 a.m. when it drops at midnight, what they're talking about. Layla was what people were talking about. That was on the mouths of everybody because the actress knocked this character out of the park, created a new addition to the MCU that we want to see more of, you know. And Mark, I'm kind of like, if I never see him again, he's in the back of that limo with Khonshu. Okay. And that says something. I'm a Moon Knight guy. He's one of my top 3 characters, and I'm not caring where I see him again.
I was gonna say, like, your top 3, and
I know.
like, we just throw that guy away after season 1 of his own show.
Right.
Very, very strong takes here from Mike and from Andres. And so it's funny as we talk about Steven and how that's the sort of conduit that we get to meet Mark and all these other characters by, because I was very heavily reminded of Kristen Wiig's Cheetah character at the beginning of Wonder Woman 1984, where you're just kind of bumbling around and nobody really likes you. And it's just nice that somebody invites you to lunch once in a while. So we get to see that, but then we get to see why he's like that versus Mark and his backstory. But here's where I feel like Layla got so interesting for me, whereas we were just kind of of curious as to how Steven got there. I love Andres' point about the emotional complexity that we get in a character like Mark and his background and everything that he dealt with. But as far as actually watching the show, I got to side with Mike a little more that Layla was the character that once she was established and not just this name and this weird cell phone we're looking at, I was kind of looking at her to be driving the action and be the crux of a lot of these stories that we're telling. So you talk about a shocking moment where we're not even talking about Moon Knight and we don't see the actual Moon Knight that much in the show. Mike Kalinowski wins this round 2 and goes up 2-0. And this is all of a sudden one of the best players in the history of the show. Andres Cabrera is on the ropes here as we head into round number 3. Mike Kalinowski and his many wolves that he lives with coming in with a vengeance as we head into, you talk about shocking moments. That was one, but this is the round 4 shocking moments, because round 3, our topic is the most shocking moment. We've had a lot of surprises, twists, turns in a mere 6 episodes. So Mike, you get to tee us up. What's your most shocking moment in Moon Knight?
I feel like I'm going to be going back and forth on myself here. I'm having my own battle here. I've got Mark, I've got Mike, and I've got Michael fighting it back and forth here, because I'm going to say my most shocking moment was Mark waking up in an insane asylum. Like, that to me, it's like, what is going on here? But again, it was the fractured mind that I've been waiting for the entire show to finally unload. You get this character, Harrow, who I was not a fan of his. And I love the performance, but the character, I just didn't know what was going on. He was this nice, benevolent guy in the hills of Bavaria, and then talking about lentil soup and having a lentil soup kitchen. I'm like, what's going on here? He's got his scales, he's balancing people, he's sucking old ladies' souls. But I'm like, I don't know what's going on with him. But then in one episode, the shocking reveal that he's the doctor, and he allowed Ethan Hawke to play all these emotions and just chew the scenery like no one's business in this scene. And there's a Harrow that I fell in love with. They're talking about every room you're going into. They finally showed the tomb, which we are like, is that Jake Lockley's personalities? He's stuck in there. The sands of time. We got the field of reeds. Like, it blew everything out of the water. And again, back to my first argument, I'm saying, like, this was the episode, I think, when they were writing, creating, bringing up the concept, they said, this is what it's going to be. This is the crux in his mind. I don't think anyone thought that for a second. It was kind of like, it's all in his mind. The way they designed the set was on purpose. It was kind of, the walls were kind of crumbling in the background. So I thought maybe audiences knew exactly, okay, this is not in his mind. This is something going on. This is messing with him. And again, it splintered everything because you're questioning everything, but not to the point you're lost. That was the important thing. A lot of times when you get in people's heads in movies, you're like, what is going on here? But this is like, oh, I see what they're doing, and I'm along for the ride.
The important point is you are still engaged, even though you have a lot of questions and they need answering soon, but it never loses us. And that really is the mastery of Moon Knight, to me anyway. Now we go to Andres Cabrera. His back's against the wall, but one of his favorite point guards of all time, Chris Paul, he's been there a few times and he's always managed to come back. Andres, let's go.
Yeah, my most shocking moment to that really just, again, embodies the show, embodies the character, even more than seeing himself wake up in an insane asylum, is the creation of Stephen Grant. When we see that extremely low point, the lowest point is in his entire life, when he is physically abused by his own mother. We've seen abusive fathers in so many films, but seeing an abusive mother blame their child for their younger brother's death is such an emotional, just deep layer of darkness that we haven't really seen too many times before on screen, that it really created this moment of vulnerability inside Mark, to the point where a young child version of Mark created this version of Stephen Grant. And this is a mystery that we as an audience, or people who maybe were not familiar with the comics, were trying to solve on their own. We weren't sure where Stephen came from, or if Stephen is just this other entity or this other version of himself, but we don't know where it really came from. And see that it came from tragedy, and seeing that it came from his little brother and an inspiration of his little brother, and what his little brother really loved, which is his favorite movie or show, that inspired that, is such a dark, really profound moment inside the character, that to me, that created a moment of complete shock and vulnerability, because it shows us that this character that we were along this journey with wasn't some aloof, dumb character. It comes from a place of tragedy. It comes from a place of vulnerability. And that to me was the emotional crux of the episode, when we realized that Stephen is a part of Mark and will always be a part of Mark, and their cohesion together is what keeps them both together as an entire entity, as a brain, as a conduit of Khonshu. Everything all together as at once for Moon Knight is both Stephen and Mark coming together, and the creation of him to me was just the most powerful moment in the entire show.
At the very least, unexpected, because when we first meet Steven and we see that he's going through some stuff with his sleep patterns, but he really just, we don't know that there's a lot to this person. It's kind of like he wakes up like any of us would have done in our formative years in our 20s, but there's a lot more than meets the eye there. We go back to Mike Kalinowski for his rebuttal here to defend his most shocking moment.
Yeah, when I watch things and I'm very highly critical of them, I do like to try and find something that I do love. And to Andres' point, like I love that they made the mother the abusive one. Every show, it's the father. So seeing that, I really love that. And I thought that was such a great moment and great writing to do. But again, it was like this series. There are great moments. 4 episodes before this, great moments. Khonshu turning the sky back. Doesn't matter what happened. They would have killed everyone on the planet doing that, but it was cool. Episode 5, everything clicked. We saw the crazy witch doctor in the episode before, but there was horror in it. There was a lot of the Egyptian history that they were going for, but we just bought it. Talking Hippo telling us on the sailing of this vessel, and we didn't question it before. Every episode that came before, when there were weird stuff happening, I'm like, oh, that seems a little out of place. Oh, okay, I see what they're trying to do there. Oh, okay. But this episode, because it was set in Mark's mind and in Steven's mind, that's where it works. So when you're seeing that stuff outside in the reality, in the real world, I'm like, it's going, I don't know if this doesn't work. This seems what, but you put it in the context of this realm that they've created in his mind, this entire, all these different rooms but it brings in Egyptian mythology to it. So it did such a good job. And I was very critical of this show. This was the one episode I couldn't find something that I didn't like. And that to me shows exactly why this was the episode that should have started it off. And it was Mark waking up in the asylum that kicks off the episode. And I think that's what the episode should have started with the series. And we would have been, I think, a lot better received as a whole.
Let's go back to Andres to defend your most shocking moment. Talk a little more about that origin story.
Well, I mean, Mike is hitting on it, man. You're talking about episode 5. That's exactly the moment where my moment happens. Because I feel like episode 5 leads to that, the emotional crux of that episode. And what makes that episode as great as Mike is saying is seeing that origin story. That's what Mark is trying to hide. That's what Steven is trying to find out going through all those doors. And that's why it's so engaging as an episode and so well directed, because we see Steven's excitement and Steven's kind of frustration wanting to see what's behind that door, what is going on inside that room. And we as an audience are asking ourselves, like, what is going on? And we wait a good 30, 45 minutes to finally find out that what it is much darker than we previously thought, which is an abusive mother who's taken all her rage out on her own son because of the loss of her other son, to the point that that's where Steven is coming from. That's where Steven is created. And obviously going in that same episode, that creation, we see once again Steven come up again when it comes to the death of his mother, and seeing that moment as well. It shows us that creation of Steven is his only emotional escape that he has to face these dark moments, and that Stephen Grant offers him that kind of conduit as a way to escape from his own reality. So to me, that entire episode is just encapsulated by that one scene of a young Mark Spector creating Stephen Grant.
These guys really got deep into this show. This is just fun for me as sort of a neophyte into the lore of Moon Knight and everything going on. I really liked the show and I got invested, but I'm learning a lot here today. Mike, you had the first opportunity to give us your closing argument here in round number 3.
It goes to the point, none of that would have happened if it wasn't for Mark waking up in the asylum. So this great reveal that we would have had wouldn't have come unless we had Mark waking up in this asylum. So that writing point, and again, I stick by this, and I've said it the entire time, the crux of this show is him waking up in his own mind, setting up the world of the asylum, because it gives us the story device to tell Mark and Steven's origins. So again, without one, you don't get the other.
All right. Can't have the left without the right, or at least that's the way I look at a Twix bar. Let's go to Andres for your final argument here in round 3.
Even more shocking than a shocking moment of waking up in an asylum is an emotional shocking moment, a moment where we see a character that we followed throughout this entire journey, especially through those 3 first episodes. We followed Steven, not Mark, and seeing that completely twist, emotional, shocking moment of the creation of Steven through the abusive mother and through his tragic backstory, I think that is even more shocking. It's kind of like the egg within the egg of a shocking moment when it comes to an episode and when it comes to him waking up in the asylum. Not only waking up in the asylum, but finding out that Stephen Grant comes from this emotionally tragic backstory. To me, that embodies the character, and it shows the entire crux of the show with the final episode, episode 6, where they're finally in cohesion and working together because of what they see with each other's minds in this episode. So to me, emotional crux is even much more important, and emotional shocking moments is much more important than just simply the complete shock of waking up in the asylum.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of folks, at first blush, you see a new show, Moon Knight. It's in the MCU. Who is this person? They're fighting crime. I get it. They have a cool costume. You have no idea it's going to get that layered and that complex. And I agree with Mike where waking up in that mental hospital did set up the world for a lot of the other shocks we're going to have. But that itself wasn't nearly as, I would say, twisted and unexpected as what the ultimate backstory of Stephen was, because it was a great point both of y'all made at various times during this round where you don't see an abusive mother that much. I mean, you got Mommy Dearest, you got Precious, and then you have a show that sounds like this show. You have a movie that sounds like this, Moonlight, and then we get to Moon Knight and we see it again, but it's still so shocking, the level that it tortured that character, and that we don't see it in the first couple episodes. And so, Andres, I knew you had backbone. Man, this guy fights when he's in a corner. It is now 2-1 because Cabrera gets the point here in round number 3 as we head to round number 4. And your topic, you get to put on your creator hats a little bit here. What's next for Moon Knight? Do we want to see season 2? Do we want to see a movie, solo? Are we teaming up here? Give us your pitch for what we want to see next from Moon Knight. And we are starting with your most recent point earner, Andres Cabrera.
As you said, introducing this entire episode, Mark, I feel like Moon Knight is different because he starts out as a TV character. When it comes to WandaVision, when it comes to Bucky and the Winter Soldier, and when it comes to Loki, we've seen all these characters in movies before, but not Moon Knight. And I feel like Moon Knight deserves some theatrical screen time. So to me, I want to see even more than a season 2. I want to see the Moon Knight characters, Moon Knight himself, and obviously, if I can, Layla. I mean, shout out to the winner of that second round. If we see more of Layla and Mark inside an actual movie, and I feel like Marvel's already setting up to this because we see the Black Knight at the end of Eternals, and we see Blade's voice at the end of Eternals. Spoilers for that movie, but we see those moments, and we realize, like, wait a minute, if Black Knight and Blade can team up, why not Moon Knight? Why not create almost this counter version of the Avengers that we've had in 2012, where it's this big team up of this, excitable group that we know and love, which is Thor, Captain America, Iron Man. Why not do this alternate, darker, more like, subterranean, underworld type version of the Avengers, and have this team up with the Moon Knight, with the Blade, with the Black Knight, and deal with the darker entities of the Marvel universe. We've already get a little bit of it with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Why not go even deeper and bring Moon Knight to the big screen?
All right, Moon Knight deserving the big screen treatment, at least in the eyes of Andres. Mike Kalinowski, how are you seeing the future of Moon Knight in the MCU?
I saw right after this show ended, I knew exactly what I wanted to happen with the show. What I loved about as a whole, and I guess this might not be a popular opinion, I love the fact that it wasn't tied to the MCU. Like every single second, someone's talking about Thanos, the snap, the blip, who's here, who's there. Like if they cut out a couple small little references here and there, you wouldn't have known that there was an MCU. And I think that's such a great thing. After 27 movies, 5 or 6 TV shows at this point, we've got another dozen on the way. There are a lot of times people want to just come in. At this point, they're like, it's too far gone. I can't see Doctor Strange. I didn't see WandaVision. I don't know this. I don't know that. Moon Knight did such a good job of distilling a character of 40 years that doesn't have a definitive history and making the definitive MCU version of this. Also teasing Jake Lockley of what's going to come. They talked about the character of Raoul Bushman. If you know, that is the Joker to Moon Knight's Batman. This is a character that I was very disappointed wasn't in the show, but the writers had said that the way he is in the comics is very similar to Killmonger with Black Panther. So I get that. They wanted to chart their own path with it. But the character, I mean, Mark leaves him by ripping off his face, and this guy comes back wearing his own face. You want to talk about horror elements, and I think Moon Knight would work so well. You've got this Jake Lockley personality, and you got Mark and Steven banding together. They understand each other now. And what I loved that the show did is, I'm not a fan of the Mr. Knight character with the suit and the thing, but they did such a great way of showing that was Steven's version of what a superhero is. So now we're going to get Jake with his version of hopefully with superheroes. And there's this kind of armored up look that's been in the comics more recently that a lot of fans were hoping he would show up in that costume. So you'll have the 3 different costumes, the 3 different personalities, and just dive into this with these 2 characters. And now that you've opened up the world to everyone else and they know this character, bring it back for the fans, kind of go a little inside baseball with the character of Moon Knight. Keep it as a TV show. I think it works so much better. You can get away with so much more and pushing the envelope, but let's keep this small scale Moon Knight character. I think it works so well. Let the big guns handle the big stuff out there. I think Mark as a character with Layla, the 2 of them together in this small corner of the MCU, it's always going to be there. If he wants to join the Avengers 20 films from now, let him do that. But this worked so well, and it's such a good entry point for people that are kind of not into the MCU, don't want to have to see 20 movies to understand what's going on in phase 5.
That's a very, very fair point. Is like, we can just watch this from the beginning and it's not that long and we get invested and we care about this character away from the incredible events that we've witnessed in a bunch of movies. I wonder if Kevin Feige's watching right now, because you are giving him 2 very different paths, but 2 great opportunities to capitalize on the success of season 1 of Moon Knight. Back to you, Andres, let me hear more about this big time movie you're putting together.
Well, to me, going back to even what you're saying, if Kevin Feige is watching, I feel like giving Oscar Isaac an opportunity. Oscar Isaac isn't, some run-of-the-mill actor. He is a big-time screen actor. This guy is a heavy hitter, and giving him the opportunity to have a theatrical version of this character, I mean, to me, that's just a missed opportunity to not have him on the big screen. This is an MCU character that he wants to play, and you can tell he's invested in this character. He gave a lot inside these 6 episodes. So him being rewarded by being on the big screen. I mean, we just saw Doctor Strange do incredible box office numbers. So, I mean, that to me already shows that the MCU has such a well-produced formula that Kevin Feige created that, to me, it's kind of a missed opportunity to not have an actor like Oscar Isaac on the big screen and having an opportunity to do something different than we've seen before. Like, again, I don't want to see the bright colored, fun-loving Avengers. I want to see something much more like we saw in a Doctor Strange, with much more horror elements and which much more, whether it's vampires, whether it's mummies, just like, let's see it all together, kind of like a Justice League Dark. Why not see that Marvel do that before DC could even do it? I mean, I'm just feeding Kevin Feige ideas right now. I mean, this is for free. y'all can take this because to me, this is just a perfect avenue to create something that is different inside the Marvel MCU formula on the big screen. And it's a perfect opportunity to see the audience that has been invested in Moon Knight and seeing these 6 episodes and fall in love, be rewarded by seeing their favorite character on the big screen, and by seeing Oscar Isaac on the big screen, and even Layla on the big screen. I think that would be awesome for little girls and people all around the world to see a character like the Scarlet Scarab on the big screen. I think that is just a perfect opportunity.
All right. Well, I think I'll speak for both Andres and Mike when I say, if the powers that be at the MCU are listening, cut these guys a check. Give them something. They're giving you a lot of great ideas right now. And Mike's is more geared towards the small screen.
Yeah. And I think the reason that is, we see this, we've seen it with Star Wars. Now we see Disney is doing a push now. They're not just dropping stuff on Disney Plus, like, it's not good for the big screen. They're trying to build that. They want to move into that. And that's where they want, like, the Mandalorian, stuff like that. Obi-Wan coming out. Would Obi-Wan been a great movie? Yeah. But we're getting a 6-episode show with just 2 movies at once. That's going to be phenomenal. So doing Moon Knight, and you talk about, to Andres' point, Oscar Isaac. Yeah, I want a tour de force performance again on the small screen, because if we put him on the big screen, then it becomes, Doctor Strange got a movie out, $500 million made. Who's everyone talking about? Wanda and Doctor Strange's movie. We got Moon Knight movie. Who we got? Like, Black Knight's popping up. We got the Punisher coming in. Hey, Daredevil's guest appearing in this. Who's going to be next? We forget Moon Knight. And then Oscar Isaac is just another cog in the wheel of the MCU machine that's going to be cranking out movies that he's sharing the poster with. Moon Knight, make it about Moon Knight. Like I said earlier, we had 600 minutes, and I think he was in the Moon Knight costume for about 3 of those. Let's let this man, who we saw his training, his videos of this, doing the stunts with the stunt team, let him get out there. Let him, and also Oscar Isaac was very kind of hesitant about this. He doesn't say he's coming back for another one. He kind of said one and done. I think he likes the idea of the television aspect of it. He can, movies take a tremendous amount of time. With a TV show, he doesn't have to be there every single day. They can work the other characters Layla's got going on. TV is much more flexible for his schedule. I think it works perfectly for him. But again, I think we both love him in the role. I think the TV show would just be a much better showcase for his talents on the big screen. He's sharing the poster with 5 or 6 other actors, and Kit Harington's gonna be in there as Black Knight, which I think is great. The idea of the Midnight Suns, that kind of Ghost Rider, Daredevil, Moon Knight, Punisher. That's a great comic and would be great. But it's just, you're sharing the screen and it's like, well, he was in it for about 10 minutes, and who's in next? Who's the cameo for the next one? Who's it going to be? Oh, okay. Squirrel Girl is going to be popping up in the next one. Yeah. Oh, Oscar Isaac is going to be. Is he in this one? I forgot. Movie or the TV show? It's Moon Knight. Let him go. There we go.
To our great producer of the show, Christian, put a pin in this. When the Squirrel Girl show or movie hits, we have to have Mike Kalinowski back on Binge Battle to try to defend some stuff about Squirrel Girl. Back to you, Andres, first for your final argument here in round 4.
I mean, what Mike just pitched sounds awesome. I'll take Squirrel Girl and Moon Knight and all that. I mean, that sounds amazing. I mean, to me, I feel like it's less about undercutting Moon Knight, and it's actually the opposite to me. To me, if I'm investing in a TV show, for example, you know this, Mark, I've been following Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. literally all 7 seasons, every single episode, multiple times, and not once did I get rewarded as a fan of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. with just give me one cameo. Just give me Agent May popping up in the background. Just give me Daisy Johnson, just saluting the camera. That's all I wanted, or just passing a piece of paper to Captain America. Like, that's all I wanted as a fan of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Watching this TV show, you want to be rewarded as a fan on the big screen. You're watching these Marvel movies and you want to see your favorite character pop up on the big screen and not just be a TV comic character. You want him to be an MCU big screen Marvel superhero. That's what you want to be rewarded with as a fan. And I as a jaded Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan, I can tell you firsthand that that's all we wanted. And seeing Moon Knight wouldn't be undercutting the character. It would be amazing. Fans would be cheering. They would be shouting out their favorite moments. They would laugh when Steven would come up. Some audience members might be confused, but oh well, us as TV show fans would be rewarded. We would be like, we get that reference. Maybe, my grandma doesn't, but we do. And it would be a fun moment to see a character like Moon Knight be rewarding to fans on the big screen, even if they are uniting with Blade or with other characters that we see in the MCU now. And it would also be a counter argument or a counter version of stuff we've seen in the past when it comes to the MCU characters, when it's much more like, basic PG kind of films like an Ant-Man or an Ant-Man and the Wasp, which is much more, geared toward a younger audience. And this one could feel like a much more geared to an older audience. So to me, big screen is still where audiences can feel the love and can feel rewarded as a Marvel fan specifically, more than anything else.
All right, bringing the fandom into it as he closes out his round. Mike Kalinowski, final word in round 4 goes to you.
I have to say, I feel that's a little bit of an elitist attitude with the differentiation between movies and television. I just think Marvel and Disney have shown that there is no, back in the day, and I say this is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., that was a TV show. I didn't want to be seeing any of them pop up on the big screen. I didn't think it would, not worth my time, but this is a different thing. And to that point, what happens if you get a Moon Knight movie and it's not good? You waited 2 years for it, and you got to wait another 2-3 years for another one. With these shows, Book of Boba Fett, Moon Knight, if you don't like one episode, guess what? Next week, they're going to be back. It could be something completely different, and you can love that episode. That's what I love about these TV shows that they're doing. Moon Knight proved that week after week. Some weeks I didn't like it. Next week, I loved it. So that way, and I get him every single week. 6 weeks, I'm going to get Oscar Isaac on my screen. You don't have to wait 2-3 years for a movie, see it one night, and then it's done. I got to wait another 2-3 years for him on the big screen. Keep him on the small screen. It's where it works. He's a smaller character. He's not many people knew about him. So it's not like, movies like Top Gun, Batman, that needs to be on the big screen with the biggest sound possible. Moon Knight doesn't need it.
All right. This is the toughest round to judge yet. And it also, incidentally, is going to be the last round that I have to judge because we have a different sort of speed round coming up in 1 second. I just got to make the quick determination that is it the TV show or is it the movie? I love Mike's idea of keeping it small with this character, but I think that having a character debut on a streaming show and then get a movie opens up a huge portal that is exciting for a lot of characters that could debut. I'm not necessarily leaning towards Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. here, Andres, but I'm thinking that there's other characters that could pop on the small screen and then get their own movie treatment. And if you team this person up with Blade and Ghost Rider and Black Knight, you kind of get me right there. Andres gets the point. We are tied at 2-2. And now here's how we're working the speed round. It's the fastest one we've ever done because we're very short on time. It's a trivia question, and it's sort of like in golf, closest to the pin. So Mike has a few months of age over Andres, but you are around the same period. So here is your trivia question. Whoever can get closest to the correct answer will be declared the winner of this binge battle. Moon Knight first debuted in Werewolf by Night, the comic series run, issue number 32. I need the month and the year that Moon Knight debuted in that episode of Werewolf by Night. Going to you first, Andres. I need your month and your year.
You're killing me here, man. I'm not good at this trivia. I just asked me Star Wars trivia. I'm going to say March 87.
March of 87. All right. So Mike has to get closer than whatever Andres guessed. Mike?
Yeah.
Werewolf by Night, issue 32.
God, I'm
when
supposed
did
to be
Moon Knight
fan
drop?
too, and I should know this. I'm going to say May. I know it's in the 70s. May of 79.
May of 79 versus March of 87. The answer is August of 1975. And with that, Mike Kalinowski, who, like I said, has a couple months and maybe even a year or so on Andres as far as age goes, does win the tiebreaker. That might have been a little unfair, but hey.
That was a little unfair, Andres. I'll give you that. I did know it was in the 70s.
I did not.
We're just here to celebrate everything that we liked and some of the controversial opinions we might have had of Moon Knight. Wherever it goes from here, I think you probably want to make sure that you're following both Mike Kalinowski and Andres Cabrera on their social media platforms for more updates, great insight into Moon Knight and the lore. Very quickly, let's just get your social media handles so all the kids out there can follow you, starting with our winner, Mike Kalinowski.
At Mike Kalinowski. Simple enough. Just my name.
And Andres Cabrera, do you have a more simple Twitter handle than Mike?
I do not. Mine is at Squad Leader Ace. And you could also follow my YouTube channel at First Cut.
Very representative name of your most beloved fandom. These guys are pretty good at trivia when it comes to Star Wars. You want to rely on Andres and Mike Kalinowski, a great Inner Geekdom player in the Schmodown. And for us, that does it here on this edition of Binge Battle, celebrating Moon Knight. To all of our Rotten Tomatoes crew, our great engineer, Christian Rubalcaba, and all of you fans watching or listening around the world, thank you for tuning in. My name is Mark Ellis, and we'll see you next time right here on Binge Battle.
Good.